Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our Android tipping calculator tutorial. And at this point, we're actually going to start coding. So let's open up Eclipse. And again, if you don't have it set up, you can search it up online to see how, or you can watch my Android setup tutorial. So open Eclipse and let's get started. I really should have opened this before I started recording, to be honest. Oh well, you guys can just wait with me now. Yeah, not a whole lot to say. For those of you who are watching my Let's Program in Python series, I've decided that's not going to be a daily video series. It's going to be Mondays to Thursdays, because I don't have the time to do it every day. Although I have been having a lot of fun doing it. Okay, so this is what Eclipse looks like. And let's go. File, New, and go to Other. And then there's an Android folder here. Click on the arrow next to it and pick Android Application Project. Next. Okay, let's call it whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Android Tip Calculator. Now, all of these fields have this little eye icon next to it where you can click or I think you can just hover over it and it'll tell you what it means. But none of it is super important. So for application name, this is what it's called on your computer basically. Project name, basically not important also, just make it the same as application name with no spaces. Package name. The package is basically where your app is stored on their device, and it has to be unique for all apps. So you're going to want something like your name dot Android apps, maybe dot Android tip calculator, something like that. So for me, I'm going to name it cloudcon dot tutorials dot tip calc. Okay, minimum required SDK. So SDK is software development kit, and the minimum required one is basically what do you need their Android device to have in order for your app to work. And obviously Android has had many versions. So you want to pick one where you capture the most amount of user base, but also don't limit yourself to the really limited sort of, or don't limit yourself to the limitations of earlier SDKs. So what you can do is search for Android or OS version distribution. Then just click on probably the first link. Okay, and it'll tell you what the distribution is like. And if you look from 2.2 all the way to 4.2, at least in January 2013, over 97% of the Android population uses Froyo, which is Android 2.2 or higher. So it seems safe to, and I know that Froyo is a very capable version. So while it looks like it makes sense to start supporting 2.2 as our minimum SDK, so that's what I used. Because if we don't, we lose 9% of the population just like that. Although going lower isn't worth it because it's only 2.4% if we go any lower for the next level. Okay, target SDK is what does your program run on the best, or what is the SDK that runs your program the best? I just put the latest one because why not? Compile with, what does this do? Again, it looks like it's mostly just the most recent version. Theme, this decides what your app will look like, which theme it'll use. Doesn't really matter, you can pick whatever you want. Okay, create custom launcher icon. It'll create an icon for you. You can check this or not, it doesn't matter. Create activity. For now, let's check that. Mark this project as a library. No, you're making an app, not a library. Create project in workspace. Yeah, let's do that. Working sets. Add project to working sets. No. Okay, so this will just create a default launch icon for you. Just click next. We want it to create an activity for us, and we can just make it a blank activity. And we can just have main activity be the name. You can use whatever you want. It doesn't matter too much. The layout name is the name of the XML file that will determine the UI for the activity, which we'll go over right now, I think. Okay, so it created this app for you, basically. And hold on, my computer is loading. Well, let's give it a sec. Okay, so it created this app for you, and all it has is "Hello World." And we're going to go ahead and delete that because it's useless to us. So one thing we should mention. The way you make Android apps is you have the option to create all of your graphic user interface inside of or with XML files. And XML is a language that is much easier to use and learn than Java is. And it's also a lot quicker to write. So it makes sense for us to take advantage of this fact. And it's one of the best reasons or one of the cool, cool attributes of Android coding. But yeah, so we can make our UI in this sort of GUI drag and drop graphical layout, or we can just code the XML here. And we'll go over how to do both in this tutorial. And then later on, when we actually write the interaction, the programming stuff with Java, it'll use the UI that we made with XML. Okay, so let's go into the XML version tab for now and just delete everything. We're going to start fresh. And I think it makes a lot more sense to learn how to do the graphical layout for this and then learn the XML. So let's start with graphical layout. First thing we're going to add is a view, a background view. And I'll explain what that is in just a second. Go under, I think, layouts, or maybe it's composite. Okay, great. Find the scroll view and drag it and then drop it right onto this gray square here. And now we have a view. And now that we're here, maybe I should talk about what a view is. The thing is, if I go into this, it's sort of a whole big thing about programming. And since I'm assuming you have no programming knowledge or very little, I don't know how long this is going to take. Okay, let's go over some basic programming concepts in Paint, and then we will probably cut the video and move on in the next video. Okay, so Java is an object-oriented language. That means it is a programming language that uses objects. An object is anything in programming that has attributes and methods. So basically, it is a thing. And that thing has things that describe it, which are attributes, and things that it can do, which are called methods. And, okay, how about this for an example? We can have a simple object like a number, or let's go with a string. A string is basically like this, letters. This is a string, and that is an object. And it has an attribute, or it has many attributes. One of them could be length. The length of the string would be an attribute. And it could have methods, for instance, like append, which would add another letter to it. So the length is something that describes the object, and append is something that the object can do. Let's try a different example. You can create your own objects. You can have like a tiger object that you code, and its attributes could be height, width, age, and its methods could be stuff like, I don't know, walk, run, die, stuff that it can do, stuff that describes it. So that's what an object is, and now we can move on. Great. So one of the most used objects that comes default with Android is the view object. The view object is an object that usually you can see and sometimes you can manipulate. And the view object is what makes up the vast majority of your UI, if not the entirety of your UI. And like I said, it comes default with Android, so you're going to use it a whole lot. It has tons of attributes, stuff like width and height and visibility, stuff like that, and tons of methods as well. And there are lots of different kinds of view objects. There's text views, edit text, and then the one we're working on now is the scroll view object. The scroll view object is all three of these things, you don't have to worry about these two, just they're there for example. All three of these are a specific implementation, maybe that's not the best word, it's a specific version of the view object. So the scroll view is a view, but it's also a bunch of other stuff that makes it scrolly. And I guess at this point I should go over inheritance real quick. And I don't know how useful any of this is going to be to you. Mostly this is a tutorial, it's not a university class, so we're not going to spend much time on programming concepts. We're just going to make stuff. And if you want, you can either look these up yourself or go on my website. There's a glossary there for this tutorial that has all of this and links to definitions that are much better than what I can give you. But I'll go over this real quick. Inheritance. Okay, with object-oriented languages, objects have inheritance. It's one of the best things about OOP. OOP stands object-oriented programming, I think it's either programming or paradigm, but anyway. So the best thing about OOP is that, or one of the best things about OOP is that objects can inherit from other objects. So you could, for instance, have a cat, and the cat has attributes like age and methods like walk. And then you can have an object like tiger. Now a tiger can inherit from cat, which means it has all the attributes and methods that cat has. But it also has its own specific tiger attributes like number of stripes. And its own specific tiger methods like, I don't know, what do tigers do? Roar. Okay? And then, so the reason this is so great is that you have this basic object here, and then you can add to it without a lot of work. You can make another object that's also a cat object, but it is specifically a jaguar. It has all the attributes that a cat has, but it also has number of spots. And it can also pounce, which I guess a cat can too, but whatever, just an example. So as you can see, the tiger inherited from the cat, but it also has lots of stuff that makes it tigery. The jaguar inherited from the same cat, but it also has its own jaguar attributes and methods. So that's what inheritance is. Now, the view object is the base foundation object for the scroll view, but the scroll view also has a bunch of methods and attributes that are its own and that make it a scroll view. Okay? Okay, that was a mouthful. I'm going to cut the video here. Hopefully that wasn't totally just gibberish for you guys. And again, there are better resources to learn what all these programming concepts mean. We just need a very basic idea so we can move on with this tutorial. So I'm going to cut it, and then I'm going to continue. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to our Android tip calculator app. We're actually going to start building our app this time. I know I said that last video, but then we got into a whole thing about objects, which was important to understand what we're going to do next. But this time, I promise we're actually going to start making the app. So let's get to that. So we put a scroll view onto our app, and what a scroll view is it lets anything that's inside of the scroll view be scrollable vertically. So our app probably is not going to fit on the screen because it's going to be too long. So we need it to be scrollable. And to do that, we put all of the elements of our app inside of a scroll view. So that's why that's there. And we're going to work a lot with this outline window here, so let's make it a lot bigger, because I rarely use this task window here, and particularly the properties window, which we want really big. Okay, so what are we going to do next? Let's go to layouts right here, and then drag and drop a table layout onto either the app preview itself, or what I like to do is drag it onto the scroll view of the outline, which I think is easier. Now, a table layout, like a scroll view, is one version of a view object, but it has a bunch of methods and attributes that make it more table-like. And what it does is it makes everything inside of it organized into a table. So, big surprise there. So what we did is we put the table layout inside of the scroll view, so now if our table gets too long, we can scroll it. And now we're going to put all of our UI elements into this table. So let's look at the properties window here. What is a property? A property is basically what a lot of Android programmers call attributes. Properties and attributes are interchangeable, and I use one or the other randomly. So they're basically the same thing. So this here has a lot of the useful attributes / properties of the table layout object, but not all of them. But we don't have to worry about that right now. Let's just get into it. So the ID, that is one property that we will be editing right now. The ID is basically a value that you can assign to objects while you're making the UI with XML. And then later on, when you're doing the code in Java, you can refer back to the objects you created in the XML file by referring to the ID that you gave them. So if I want to change some aspect of the table layout when I'm writing the code in Java, I can just access this table layout by giving the code the ID of this table. And the ID that we're going to give it is this right here. I'll zoom in. So note the syntax, it has to be @ plus ID / and then the name of the ID you want to give. In this case, we just called it the main table. And always remember to put this prefix ahead of the ID. Also, you can note that a programming norm is to make the name, the first word in the name lowercase, then have no spaces, and then every word after the first word start with a capital. Okay, so we gave it an ID, great. Now we can access it in our Java code. Now let's continue. Let's see what we have to do next. According to our plan, we have a text bit here that says pretext bill. So let's add that. So let's go to, where is, form widgets, I think? Yeah. Now let's drag and drop a medium text. Oh, by the way, if what you see here is different than what I see, go ahead and click this triangle up here. And I think by default Eclipse has show small previews on, which looks like this. I don't really like this, so I switched it to show icons and text. Right then, drag a medium text either onto the preview, or what I like to do is onto the outline, and put it onto table row 1. So the first row of our table now has this here. And let's edit the properties. It automatically gave it an ID. We can use that or we cannot. We don't need it, so I'm just gonna ignore it. You can delete it too if you want. Let's see, what are the major properties of a text view? Okay, first of all, what is a text view? This is a text view, and a text view is basically a view object that has text on it, and the text cannot usually be manipulated by the user. So it's exactly what it sounds like, and there are different sizes. This is a medium-sized one. Okay, so let's change the text here to say pre-text bill. Let's also change the gravity. So the gravity the gravity is basically alignment in terms of word processing. So we want it to be right aligned and also centered. So let's click this little button here for gravity, make it center vertical, and then right. You'll notice that nothing actually happened. That's because there's nothing in the table yet. Once we add more stuff, it'll move based on the gravity. So don't worry about that. Okay, what else do we have? Let's check the plan. We have a button here that lets the user add more diners. So let's go in that button. And And let me make sure that there's nothing else that we need for the pre-text fill. Yeah, it looks like that's all. Okay. Yeah, I don't see anything else. So let's make the image button. So go to Images and Media, and drag and drop an image button into the same row as pre-text fill. And for this thing here, you can just click OK. It'll give you a default image, which is that. And there we go. Again, this is still row 1. Let's give it an ID, because we're going to need to access this in our Java code. Let's call it Add Diner Button. Oops, caps lock. Okay, great. And let's change the source, because we don't really want this weird Android mascot thing here. So change it to... Oh, I guess... Okay, I'll talk about this in just a sec. Weird. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you're going to need buttons, basically, for this app. I already have buttons that I set up ahead of time. And, darn it, this is going to take the whole video to explain, probably. Okay, let's do it. Let me find the thing. Okay, so this is your folder for your app. And then you go to the Resources folder. And you'll see that you have 4 drawable folders. These are different resolution versions of the images that you want to use for your app. It goes low DPI, medium DPI, high DPI, and extra high DPI. Now, DPI stands for dots per inch, which is a measurement for resolution that Google likes to use. And you basically need 4, okay, you don't need, but you can have 4 different versions of every image that you plan to use for your app. And the reason to do this is that different Android devices are going to have different resolutions, because unlike Apple phones, there are a whole range of different Android devices. And if you want your app to look the same or roughly the same across all of them, you should probably have different resolution images for every single one of your images. Now, you don't have to do that. If you only have one version of an image, then you can create a new folder and call it just drawable, and just put one version of the image in here. And Android will automatically try to find the best resolution image for a particular device. And if it sees that you only have one version available, it'll just resize that by itself. There's going to be some quality loss, but if you don't care about that and you're lazy, you can just have one image. If you're worried about resolution, you can have 4 images, or less than 4, just as many as you want, basically up to 4, and you put them in the correct folder. And so that's what that's about. You can either download the image that I use from my website again, the source page that I showed earlier on in the series, or you can find your own. The ones here, they have red X's on them because I don't own the rights to these images. I can use them, but I can't give them away, so I put the watermarks on them. Okay, so let's look at this image button. We already looked at one property, which was the source, right here. Now what you have to do is just the folder, it doesn't matter which folder or which resolution that it uses, you just have it say @drawable, and then Android will automatically find the right resolution. And then put the name of the image. Make sure you don't put the file extension like .png or .jpeg, because Android will just find the image automatically. That also means that you can't have any image with the same name as another one. So you can't have an addDiner.png as well as an addDiner.jpg. That's going to mess Android up. So yeah, that's all we need. @drawable / the name of the button, and that's the source property. And again, we changed the ID property up there. Okay, I think that's all we need for this. Let's move on to the next table row. Let's see what we have. Oops. We have a diner, and then we have the amount, and then we have another button. Okay, let's do that. Go back to text fields, or sorry, form widgets, or you know what, go to text fields, and take and edit text, which is what these are. Drag a person's name down onto row 2. Now this is an edit text object. An edit text object is another version of the view object that we keep talking about, except that the text it has can be edited by the user. So let's do that, and let's change the ID here to first customer. And let's go ahead and change the text to just say customer. Let's also change the gravity. Now here's the thing with gravity in Android. Let me check how much time is left first. Okay, let's quickly go over gravity, and then I'm going to have to cut this again. So you have layout parameters gravity here, right? And what that does is it sets the gravity for the view itself. On the other hand, this is the text view, and it has content inside the view, in this case the word customer. If you want to set the gravity or the alignment for just the word customer, you scroll down and find a second gravity property here, and you can change it. We're going to make it right center vertical. And if I didn't do that, let me undo that. And if I change just the gravity that's up here, you'll see that nothing happens, right? Oh, also you notice that when we added the button, the pre-text bow here jumped here, like I said it would. But anyway, so for this one, we don't want to change the layout parameters gravity. We want to change the gravity that's under text view, which is all the way down here, right here. And we'll make it right center vertical. And if we go into the XML tab here and we look at it, we know that the text view gravity is written as Android :gravity, whereas the other gravity is written as Android :layout _gravity. So the basic difference is really well explained in this infographic I made. I said pretentiously. So here's the, what do you call it? This is the layout parameters gravity. This is where layout parameters gravity is left aligned and the text view gravity is centered. So this is the text view, and this is, let's call it the table view, the table layout. With the left aligned layout parameters gravity, the entire view is left aligned with respect to the table layout. And then when the text view gravity is centered, the actual text is centered inside of the text view object. On the other hand, if layout parameters gravity is centered and text gravity is left aligned, then we have the entire text view being centered inside the table layout, but the content is still left aligned with respect to the actual text view object. I'm not sure if that made any sense, but you can look at the picture and hopefully it'll click for you. So there's two gravities for a lot of objects, and that's what the difference is. One controls the alignment of the content inside the view, and one controls the view with respect to the view that it's inside, the parent view. Okay, so we have that. Anything else? I don't think we need to add anything else to that one. Let's go ahead and add another edit text. This time where it's going to be, according to this picture, the dollar amount. So let's go to text fields again and then find number decimal. Drag it here or here. Oops. Let's give it an ID of amount 1 of 1. And we're calling it that because this is the amount for the first customer and this is first order. So amount 1 of 1 is what I want to call it. Let's ignore the layout parameters gravity again and instead find the text view gravity, which is, oh, I'm sorry, I think I accidentally changed. Oh shoot, yeah, I accidentally changed the ID for the table row instead of the edit text. Let me fix that. There we go. You have to be careful with that. There we go. Okay, let's change the gravity. Again, go to the text view gravity. And just for simplicity's sake, whenever I say gravity from now on, I mean text view gravity. And if I want to say layout parameters gravity, I'm just going to say layout gravity. So this up here is layout gravity. This down here is just regular gravity. Oh, where did it go? Okay. Let's make it center. Simply centered. And let's give it some text. So let's make it $0 because that's going to be the default. And then else? Okay, let's also make this. Alright, let's do that later. Actually, I'm gonna cut the video, and we can go over what happens next in the next video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next installment of Android Tip Calculator tutorial. So we're right here, and one thing I forgot to say in the last video is that we have to set one more property here. So click on the first customer, and then scroll down to, where is it? Here, select all on focus. Set it to true. And then go to amount 1 of 1, and also set it to true. So what does that do? What that does is basically makes it so that when the end user clicks on one of these two edit texts, it'll automatically select all the text that's inside of it, and that way the user can easily delete what's already there and enter his new input. And focus is basically what view is currently active. So what is the user currently editing if it's an edit text. Okay, great. And you'll notice that in our preview here, the customer right here is already highlighted. So that means that customer is the default first thing that gets focused when the app starts. And that doesn't really make sense for a tip calculator because our user probably doesn't care too much about who or about the name right here. He probably just wants to get right to editing the numbers. So let's change that. Go into the XML. Find our code block for our first customer, which is this one. You can just double click it this way. Find the request focused line of code here and cut it and paste it down here. This is our edit text. Oh, sorry. Yeah, here. This is our edit text for amount 1 of 1. And now our $0 right here will be the first thing that's focused, although we're not done yet, so it doesn't show up. Go ahead and, so what we did was we cut this, we had to change how we close the tag. So in XML you can close this block code two ways. One is to put slash and then brackets, or you can just do slash edit text and put that whole thing in the brackets. So basically what I'm saying is you have to move this also, cut it, put it down here, and then delete this slash and put a slash here. That's basically all I'm trying to say. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Okay, great. So now this is the first thing that's selected. And you'll notice that Eclipse is giving us some errors, or at least warnings. It says hard-coded string customer should use @string resource. And what that means is, generally speaking, it's not always a good idea to write strings, to hard-code strings like this by typing just what you want there to be. Usually you want to have a variable that you can change easily instead of hard-coding. So this is what makes Eclipse happy. I'll show you. You go to resources and go to values and go to strings, and then you add a string, and let's say click on strings, give it a name of 0, and then give it a value of what we want it to be, so this. And then we go ahead and go back to our layout right here. And let's go over here, and instead of having it just be this, we can change it to a string. @string/0. Save it. And, oh, wait, that's not right. Maybe it's not supposed to have a... Let me see. Shoot, what was it? Will this fix it? Okay, I'm just going to do it the GUI way because I can't remember. So go here, click the ... here, Oh, I know what it is, sorry. We forgot to save the string document. So Control S to save it, go back here. And there it is. And it is @string/0. And we click OK. And then the warning should disappear. If it doesn't, hit save. So what we did is we replaced our hard-coded string with a variable called 0. And now we can replace all of the, well, we don't have any more, but if we had more edit text that we want to say 0, we can replace it all with just @string/0. And then if we ever want to change what 0 looks like, we can just change it once in our strings document here, and it'll change for everything. And that's what Eclipse wants you to do. I don't actually do that for a lot of strings because I think it's easier just to hard-code it in. So arguably it's bad practice, but I think for stuff like this, it's irrelevant. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. But that's what you might want to do if you feel like it. Again, I'm not going to do it. And because I'm not doing it, I have these really annoying warnings, so I'll show you how to get rid of them if you don't want to deal with them either. Click this red square here. And go to the warning, hard-coded string, blah blah blah, and press disable issue type. And now Eclipse will not complain about it anymore. We have 2 more warnings, so let's go ahead and deal with them. First warning is accessibility, missing content description attribute on image. So what that means is Eclipse wants you to type this in. Save it, and it'll be happy. Now, what the content description property is for people who are visually impaired, they can't see everything that's on your app. So they need their device to read out to them what's on the screen. Now, the device can usually read text views and edit text really easily because that's just text. But what about buttons and image buttons and images? If you want your visually impaired users to be able to understand what's on your app or what's on your images, you can put a content description attribute here, and then give it the name or give it a description for what the button or image button does. In this case, adds another diner. And then the blind user can go ahead and have the device read out to him what this button does, even though it's an image. So it's an accessibility option, but it is very optional, and I actually don't use it because, well, partly it's just because it takes too long to add them all. You can use it if you want. I'm going to go ahead and not do it, and I'm going to suppress the warning as well. So the same thing, go click on it and then disable issue type. Arguably this is a bad thing, you know, decreasing accessibility, but I feel like most people that are visually impaired will have more things to worry about than calculators. So there we go. I disabled it, and we actually have one more warning here. Let's go fix that. It says that our layout height should be wrap content. That's fine. Let's make it wrap content. So what these are, okay, so for a lot of these width and height variable or attributes, we have stuff like wrap content and match parent and fill parent instead of like pixel amounts. And what that means is, okay, so fill parent is fill up the parent view that you're in, or attempt to fill up the parent view. Let me explain with Paint. So a parent view is the view that the current view is located in. So this is, say, the table layout, or let's just make this the scroll view, and this is the table layout. And then what it's doing now is it's filling the parent. This table layout is filling as much as it can the parent view, which is the scroll view. We can also have match parent, which, from what I understand, is very much the same thing. It will match the height and width of the parent. And then the last one is wrap content. So this is our scroll view here, and then this is our table layout, and the table layout has content inside. Content. So it'll expand and contract based on how big the content is. So right now the content is that big, so the table layout is that big. If the content is longer, then the table layout will automatically expand to wrap around that content. So that's what wrap content is. So those are the three main ones that we use for height and width. Let's move on. Okay, let's look at the plan again. We need a add order button for the first customer, so let's add that in. Same basic idea, nothing new here, and I'm going to start moving a little bit faster since we're starting to get a hang of Eclipse. So put it in table 2 as well, and you can give it the proper image if you have it. I do have it, so put it there. Let's give it an ID of add button 1. Okay, and great. So we have the first part of, where is it, of our plan done. Basically, this whole part here is done because remember, Dynamic 2 and all the other orders, those are totally optional. They're created dynamically when the user clicks these buttons. So when the app first starts out, and that's what we're designing here, the first starting out layout, the user doesn't actually see these. And obviously it's not quite right because it does not fit the screen. This first button here, it is completely stretched out because Android is trying to make it fit, or it's trying to make it the same size as this thing here, and that's not good. And I have an infographic I want to share. So here's what we have. The button is all stretched out over here, and we want the button to be small and over here and aligned with the add button. We want to move this button to the third column instead of having it be in the second column where it's aligned with this huge edit text. So how do we do that? Let's see. Click on the Add Diner button. And I believe you can actually do this in the graphical layout tab. I think you have to go into the XML. I might be wrong, but we should learn XML anyway, so let's go into the XML. You can double click it. This is the image button we're working with. This is what you do. This line of code right here, Android : layout underscore column equals, and then 2 in quotes. And if we look, you can see that it's not here, it's actually on the side over here, right here, that we can't see. And what that is, so the column property, the layout underscore column property, just says where in which column this item should occupy in the table. By default, the first item you put into a row will be the first column, and the second will be the second column, and so on and so forth. If you want to change that, you use this property. And you notice that the number 2 here corresponds with the third column, because the first column is actually column 0, according to Android. So it goes 0, first column, then 1 corresponds to the second column, and 2 here corresponds to the third column, and that's what we used. Okay, moving on. Obviously, a huge problem still is that it still does not fit in the screen, even though it's properly aligned. So now we gotta change one more thing. Again, I think this has to be done in XML, but I'm not quite sure. Go up here into the scroll view, and let's write some code. Type Android shrink. Oh, you know what? I think I'm wrong. It's not here. We actually have to type it into the table layout, the main table code here. So put it there, and it's, sorry, let me zoom in. First one, Android layout underscore, Android : shrink columns, and it'll just tell you what it is. If anytime you want to know what any of these properties are, you can just hover over it, and Eclipse will tell you. Or I thought it would. Might be an option. Okay, anyway, I'll tell you what it is after I finish writing this code. And another line, Android stretch columns. Okay, great. Let's look at it. Looks pretty good, I think. So let's go over what we just did. Okay, so the shrink columns property is, it basically shrinks all of the, okay, how do I put this? What's the best way to explain this? Okay, so so you put a string or you put two numbers here. The first number indicates which column you want to shrink. The second number is true or false, it's 1 or 0. So we want to shrink column 0, and we set this to true, as in we do want to shrink it. So what it does is it takes the first column and shrinks it so that everything fits inside the table, or fits inside the screen. And then we also have stretch columns. And what this does is it takes the 0 here represents the first column again, and it stretches the first column. Oh, and again 1 is true rather than false, so that's why that's 1. And it stretches the column in case our app is being run in a huge tablet or something and it actually doesn't fit. It'll stretch the first column so that the entire row will fill out the entire screen, or at least the entire table layout. We won't really run into it here with most mobile devices, but I put it into most of my apps just in case they run it on a larger device. And then you can change this to let's say, again, if you change it to the third column, it's not going to be able to shrink it enough. So we needed to shrink the first column because that's a huge column. And what Android does really well is that it actually makes sure that, or it seems to make sure that this column is actually the same size as this column, which is very aesthetically pleasing, so that's good that it does it automatically. But anyway, so that's what those two do. And if you ever get stuck, you can just search for this. And then just go to the official Android website. And it'll give you a better definition than I can about what all these things I'm talking about do. How much time do we have? Okay, we're gonna have to cut this soon. It looks pretty nice. One thing I'll change right now is you'll notice that this doesn't quite line up with this button. So let's go ahead and center it. We already centered the gravity, so let's center the layout gravity. Make it center, and now it looks quite nice. Okay, the first part of our app is done. We're going to move on and code the rest of it in the next video. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the next installment of our Android tip calculator app, our tutorial. Okay, so let's continue with where we left off. We notice right now that the app is pressing on the edges of the screen, and it'd be nice to have a bit of a border, so let's make a border. Select the scroll view, and scroll down in the properties window, and find padding. Let's give it padding of 10 dB. And that, I think, looks a lot nicer. So DP, what is DP? DP stands for Density Independent Pixel. A Density Independent Pixel is a pixel that Android will adjust in size based on the resolution of the device your user is using. So if you just use a regular pixel, what this app will look like will vary based on how large the resolution of your target device is. If you use density independent pixels, Android will automatically adjust the UI so that it looks roughly the same across all devices. So pretty much in every case, you're going to want to use DP over PX, which stands for pixel, because DP is always better pretty much. Okay, next, there's two lines of code that we have to copy from my website, or you can type them out, but it's a lot easier to just copy. So right here, I'll zoom in for you in Eclipse. Let's go into the scroll view in XML, and let's go ahead and paste it, and then I'll explain. Oh, sorry, won't paste it there. We'll paste it here. Okay, so what is this? These two lines of code define the namespace for the XML language that we're using throughout the rest of the document. So basically, for every XML layout document you have, you're going to want to have these two lines of code as the first two lines. And they're going to go in the first code block, in this case, a scroll view that you have. And I won't go into what a namespace is or exactly what it does. It's just something that you're always going to have, and it basically tells the document, or it tells Android that this document is written according to the rules that are found here and here. Essentially, that's what it means. Okay, so now that that's done, let's go on and, I don't know, look at our plan or something. Okay, so there's a line here, which serves no purpose except it looks nice. So let's add a line. Now, sadly, there's actually no easy way to add a line in Android. It's really kind of sad, but you have to do it in a roundabout sort of way. So let me show you how to add a line. We're on table row 3 of main table. Let's add a text field. No, sorry, let's add a text view. And it can just be a regular text view. Put it in table 3. Let's go in there and let us change the text. Oh, sorry, we're doing it in the graphical layout, aren't we? Alright, let's change the text to nothing. We'll make it empty. So now it's just an empty text. Now find the, where is it? Find the gravity, oh sorry, the background property. And it's right here, background. And give it a value of number sign 000. Now that's the hexadecimal value for the color black, and we want a black line. So that's what we have. So far it's not so great, so let's improve it. It's way too thick, so let's change the height. So find the height property and change it to 1 dB. Again, density independent pixel. Looks nice, looks good. Let's go ahead and expand it though. Oh, you know what? I didn't explain what exactly the padding property is. So we added padding to the scroll view, and it's basically empty space between the edges or the border of the view and the content inside the view. So if that was not obvious, that's what it is. Okay, let's go back to this. Go back to the text view, or the line. And okay, so now we have a problem. It only covers the first column. We want it to cover all three columns. So go into the XML. I don't think you can do this in the graphic layout tab, but you might. Anyway, we're going to do it in the XML. Type the following lines of code, or just the following line. One line. Layout, or Android : layout underscore SPAN equals 3. Let's take a look. So, as you can see, what the span variable or property does is it tells Android how many columns this view takes up. By default, it only takes up 1. We want it to take up 3, so that's what we set it to. So now it goes across all 3. For aesthetic reasons, maybe we want to make sure that this doesn't go all the way to the edge of the table. Maybe we want it to only go up to, or leave a pretty big space here to make it look a little nicer. So how do we do that? We could, you would think we could use padding like we did for the outline here, or the border for the scroll view. But if we actually tried that, where's padding? Here it is. 10 dp. Nothing actually happens. Why? Because padding... Okay, I'll show you what we're supposed to do first, and then I'll explain the difference. We need to change margins, so let's change the margins. Let's put 25 dp on the left side, and 25 dp on the right side. Oh shoot, I'm changing the scroll view properties. I keep doing this. Sorry, make sure you have the proper view selected. So 25 dp on the left and right. Oh, sorry, my Eclipse is bugging out on me. Not sure what's going on. Okay, I'm having some trouble with Eclipse, so I'm just going to do it in XML. Margin left, also 25 dp. So that pushed the sides in for the line, and then let's do the top and... Wow, I don't know what's going on here. Top and bottom. And we'll just give a small cushion of space of 3 dp. Okay. Oh, darn it. It's changing the properties for this roll view again. Let's go back here. Top 3DP, bottom 3DP. Okay, right then. So now we have a nice line with a cushion of space around it. So you might be wondering, okay, let's talk about what exactly we did. So instead of creating a line conventionally, what we actually had to do, because Android is, like all things, imperfect, we had to make another row and make it a text view, but with no text in it. And then we changed the background color of that view to black, and then we made it so that it was only 1 dp thick, and then we made it span across 3 columns. So this is actually a text view, not a line, but it looks like a line, so that's good enough for us. But at this point you may be wondering, what is the difference between padding and margin? So up here in scroll view we used padding to create the space, whereas down here we used margin because we had to. So I have an infographic for that. The margins are pink, the paddings are green. Here we have a, let's call it a parent view that is a scroll view, and then 2 table views inside of it, view 1 and view 2. The padding, and then inside of the table of views we have a row, which is this blue box here. So the margins are the spaces in between the actual views on the outside of the borders, and the padding refers to the space that is between the border of the view and the content that it contains. So the padding is the space on the inside of the border, and the margins are the spaces on the outside of the border of the view. And the reason we couldn't use padding for our line was because if we increase the space here, again green is padding, so if we increase the space here, that's still, the padding space right here is still part of the background. And since we set the background to black, no matter how much we increase the screen space, the whole thing is still going to be black. So hopefully that made sense. Since we had to change the margins and set the padding. So that's what the difference is. So we created a line, and I think that's all we're going to manage to do in this one. We're going to go ahead and cut and make a new video, so give me a sec.